Las Vegas was once a city where you didn't need to be rich to feel like royalty. The flashing neon lights weren't the only thing that dazzled visitors. It was the promise of abundance. A shrimp cocktail for $1.99 steak and eggs for $5 at 2 in the morning, prime rib dinners under $10, and endless buffets where you could stack your plate higher than your appetite. Vegas wasn't just about gambling, it was about being spoiled. The city's unspoken deal was simple: lose a little at the tables, win big at the dining hall. Everyone left feeling like a winner. But in 2025, that deal feels broken. The city that once lured millions with generosity now squeezes them at every turn. The cheap buffets are nearly extinct, the portions have shrunk, and the prices they've exploded into triple digits. What used to cost $10 now demands $120. Even fast food, the last refugee of budget travelers, has turned into a splurge. For families, it's no longer about indulgence, it's about survival. So, what happened to cheap Vegas? Why did the very place that built its empire on generosity abandon the very people who made it thrive? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on 9 reasons why the city of endless plates became the city of empty wallets. And what we uncover may prove that Vegas can never go back. There was a time when Las Vegas was not just a playground of lights and slot machines, but a temple of generosity. From the 1960s through the 1990s, visitors poured into the desert city not only for the chance to strike it rich, but for the guarantee that no matter how much they gambled away, they would be fed like kings. Casinos knew exactly what they were doing. They called it the loss leader strategy: lure gamblers in with absurdly cheap meals, then let the tables reclaim their wallets. And for decades it worked. Buffets became the beating heart of this strategy. For just a few dollars, you could walk into a dining hall that looked like an endless cornucopia. Steak carved fresh before your eyes, trays of fried shrimp stacked to the ceiling, desserts piled on silver platters that sparkled under the lights. For $9.99, you could indulge in food that felt limitless. It wasn't just a meal, it was a performance, a spectacle of abundance that told every visitor in Vegas you are special. Stories of legendary deals spread far beyond Nevada. The Golden Gates shrimp cocktail, served for just $1.99, became a pilgrimage for budget travelers. Prime rib dinners for under $10 were advertised on neon marquees, promising satisfaction that felt almost unreal. Even in the middle of the night, cheap steak and eggs drew crowds of gamblers and night owls who wanted to cap off their adventures with a feast that didn't punish their wallets. This wasn't fine dining. It was comfort, excess, and affordability all rolled into one. The brilliance of this model was psychological. By feeding visitors generously, the casinos created loyalty. People came back not just for the games, but for the feeling of being spoiled without spending a fortune. Vegas became the only city in the world where you could lose hundreds at the tables, yet still walk away bragging about the buffet that made you feel like a winner. The food was never about profit. It was about building a myth, the myth of cheap Vegas. Locals embraced it too. Workers who finished long shifts on the casino floor could sit down for a $5 steak, while families took pride in treating their children to overflowing buffets that didn't break the bank. Eating out wasn't a luxury. It was part of the lifestyle. Vegas belonged to everyone, the high rollers and the penny slots players alike. But beneath that glittering facade of generosity, a quiet shift was already underway. The economics of casinos were changing. Food could no longer stay cheap forever, not when the city began chasing a different image. What began as a marketing gimmick to keep gamblers happy would eventually evolve into a luxury product for the wealthy. The golden era of abundance was ending, and few realized it. Still, for those who lived it, the glory days remain unforgettable. Ask an older visitor about their first trip to Vegas, and chances are they won't talk about the slot machines or the shows. They'll talk about the shrimp cocktail that cost less than $2, or the buffet where they ate until they could barely stand. Those memories are more than nostalgia. They are proof of an identity that once defined Las Vegas, the city where anyone rich or poor could feast like royalty. But when that identity begins to crumble, when abundance itself is taken off the table, the story of Vegas begins to change. And it all started with the collapse of its most iconic promise, the buffet. The buffet was more than a meal. It was the essence of Las Vegas, the one ritual that every visitor could afford to enjoy. Walking into a casino dining hall in the 1980s or 1990s felt like stepping into a wonderland of food. You didn't need a reservation, you didn't need a thick wallet, and you didn't need to choose just one dish. For $10 or less, the world was yours: prime rib-fried chicken, endless desserts, and shrimp cocktail piled so high it seemed impossible that the casino could make money. And that was the point. Buffets weren't built to make money, they were built to create loyalty, to keep gamblers happy, and to give every visitor a reason to brag about their trip. But by 2025, that chapter has almost completely closed. The pandemic was the breaking point. In 2020, buffets across the Strip shut down overnight. Health restrictions, sanitation costs, and the uncertainty of tourism all made reopening difficult. When Las Vegas emerged from the shutdowns, the world had changed. Most of the city's legendary buffets never came back. The few that did reopen returned in a very different form, no longer cheap, no longer generous, and no longer designed for the average tourist. Today, buffets in Las Vegas are luxury events, not everyday indulgences. At Caesar's Palace, the Bacchanal buffet, once a celebrated staple, now charges $79 per person on weekdays and more than $100 on weekends. At the Wynn, a dinner buffet can easily climb past $120 per person. For a family of four, that means nearly $500 before drinks, tax, and tip. What was once the most accessible experience in Vegas has become a privilege reserved for those willing to drop half a paycheck on a single meal. The shift has left visitors stunned. For decades, buffets symbolized abundance for all. Now, they symbolize exclusion. A 2025 survey found that 63% of visitors to Las Vegas skipped buffets altogether, not because they didn't want the experience, but because the price felt unreasonable. The cheap magic was gone. The long lines, once fueled by anticipation, are now filled with frustration as guests pay hundreds only to discover fewer choices, smaller portions, and less excitement than the buffets of old. And this change isn't just about money, it's about psychology. The buffet represented more than food. It represented the idea that in Vegas everyone was treated generously. When that symbol collapses, it changes the entire perception of the city. If even the buffet, the most democratic of all Vegas traditions, is now reserved for the wealthy, what does that say about the rest of the experience? Families feel it most. Parents who once looked forward to spoiling their kids with plates stacked higher than their heads now hesitate to even step into the line. Travelers who used to build entire trips around buffet hopping now find themselves searching for alternatives off the Strip. And locals who once relied on buffets as affordable family outings have largely given up. The sense of community and shared abundance is gone. The irony is painful. Casinos originally built buffets to lose money, using them as bait to win bigger profits on the floor. But over time, as the industry shifted toward maximizing revenue from every corner of the experience, buffets turned from a gift into a product. Instead of luring gamblers, they became another profit center, squeezed by rising food costs, soaring wages, and an industry-wide focus on exclusivity. What began as a symbol of generosity is now a warning sign that Las Vegas has abandoned its old identity. Online, the backlash is clear. Tourists share photos comparing the mountains of shrimp cocktail they enjoyed in 2010 to the handful of shrimp served in 2025. Reddit threads accuse casinos of turning buffets into overpriced food shows that no longer deliver on value. Travel bloggers warn readers to budget hundreds of dollars if they want to experience the once iconic Bacchanal. The buffet, once an entry point for first-time visitors, is now an obstacle, a reminder that indulgence is no longer for everyone. And when the icon of affordability dies, the consequences spread far beyond the dining hall. Buffets set the tone for the entire Las Vegas experience. They were the first taste of abundance, the first impression of a city that promised more. When that promise collapses, the rest of the Strip follows. Smaller plates, higher prices, hidden fees, all of it stems from the same shift, the death of generosity. The collapse of buffets didn't just end an era. It set off a chain reaction that would touch every restaurant, every bar, and every visitor. Because once the most beloved tradition of cheap Vegas was priced out of reach, everything else was destined to follow. And the first ripple of that collapse was something tourists noticed immediately: shrinkflation. If the collapse of buffets marked the death of abundance, shrinkflation became the quiet assassin that finished the job. The principle is simple: shrink the portion, raise the price, and hope nobody notices. But in Las Vegas, where dining was once synonymous with excess, people noticed immediately. Step into almost any Strip restaurant in 2025 and you'll see the shift. A ribeye steak that once weighed 16 ounces now arrives at 12. The price not lower, higher. What cost $48 just a few years ago now sits at $72. At a popular Italian spot, pasta bowls are visibly smaller, half the size they once were, but entrees still run $35 or $40. Even cocktails, the liquid centerpiece of Vegas nightlife, have changed. Bartenders admit quietly that glasses are filled with more ice, less liquor, and garnishes that disguise the cutback. Yet the price tag has soared past $20 a glass. Tourists are documenting the difference. Social media is flooded with side-by-side photos: a towering shrimp cocktail in 2017 next to a dainty martini glass in 2025, a pasta plate that once spilled over, now reduced to a minimalist drizzle. Reddit threads call it sample-size dining at luxury prices. TripAdvisor reviews sting. "I don't mind paying $100 for dinner in Vegas. I mind leaving hungry." The psychology of shrinkflation is toxic. Vegas built its brand on the idea that you'd always get more here, more lights, more thrills, more food. When plates shrink, guests don't just feel shortchanged, they feel betrayed. The illusion of generosity evaporates, replaced with suspicion that every dish is another trick. And once trust erodes, no portion, size can rebuild it. Industry insiders defend the practice as survival. Rising food costs, higher wages, and supply chain shocks forced operators to adjust. But instead of raising prices transparently, many quietly reduced portion sizes while charging more. The gamble was that tourists drunk on neon and adrenaline wouldn't notice. That gamble failed. Tourists noticed, locals noticed, and the anger spread. But shrinkflation is only one part of the deception. The other comes at the bottom of the bill, where hidden fees now lurk like landmines. It starts innocently enough: $38 for salmon, $22 for a cocktail. Pricey but manageable. Then the check arrives. Tacked on is a 20% service charge. Add a kitchen appreciation fee. Maybe even a health and wellness surcharge. Suddenly, your $60 meal is $90 and you haven't even tipped yet. In 2024, a Vegas travel poll found that 41% of visitors reported surprise charges on their dining bills. Nearly half of those said it made them reconsider eating on the Strip altogether. And these aren't isolated to fine dining. Fast casual cafes, Buffett's even neighborhood bars have adopted the practice. Some add entertainment fees even when no live music is playing. To tourists, it feels like the resort fee scam transplanted into restaurants, mandatory charges for things they never asked for, never used, and cannot refuse. Screenshots of bills have gone viral receipts, with 5 separate fees stacked beneath the subtotal, each one vague enough to avoid scrutiny. Social media advice now warns always budget 30% more than what the menu says. The backlash is real, but for restaurants the practice works. Tourists are too exhausted to argue at the end of a $300 dinner, too embarrassed to fight over a $12 mystery charge. Hidden fees aren't just lucrative, they're designed to wear guests down. The result is exhaustion instead of indulgence. Dining out in Vegas feels less like an escape and more like a test of patience. And exhaustion is the opposite of what Las Vegas once promised. The magic of cheap Vegas wasn't just that food was affordable, it was that food was effortless, a carefree bonus on top of the gambling and shows. Now every plate carries a calculation, every bill a sting of suspicion. The tragedy of shrinkflation and hidden fees is that they don't just affect the wallet, they corrode the culture. They erode the trust that once defined Las Vegas. In the past, guests left Buffett's marveling at how much they got for so little. Today, they leave restaurants grumbling about how little they got for so much. And that shift changes everything, because when visitors stop feeling spoiled, when they stop bragging about their meals and start warning others online, the allure of Las Vegas fades. Shrinkflation and hidden fees are not just cost-saving measures. They are warning signals that the city's promise of generosity has been replaced with nickel and diming at every turn. And once that perception takes hold, it doesn't just hurt restaurants, it reshapes the entire economy of the Strip. And yet, as damaging as shrinkflation and hidden tricks are, they are only symptoms of a larger transformation. The real turning point wasn't portion sizes or receipts. It was the rise of a new dining empire, one stamped with famous names, celebrity chefs, and the glitz of television branding. And that shift would change Las Vegas forever. When Buffett's began to fade and shrinkflation crept into every corner of the Strip, another force stepped onto the stage, the rise of the celebrity chef. What started as a clever marketing strategy in the early 2000s has by 2025 reshaped the entire dining economy of Las Vegas. The city that once promised cheap steak and bottomless cocktails is now dominated by big names: Gordon Ramsay, Nobu, Giada, Guy Fieri. The Strip has become less about what's on the plate and more about whose face is on the marquee. It wasn't always this way. 2 decades ago, Las Vegas was desperate to reinvent itself. The image of smoky casinos and bargain buffets no longer felt fresh. The city needed prestige glamour, a new way to attract tourists who were less interested in slot machines and more interested in experiences. And so, the celebrity chef takeover began. Suddenly, visitors could taste the same dishes they had watched on television or read about in glossy magazines. Fine dining wasn't just food, it was entertainment. At first, it worked brilliantly. Tourists lined up for Gordon Ramsay's beef Wellington, thrilled to finally taste what they had only seen on Hell's Kitchen. Nobu's sushi became a must-try for the elite. Giada's Italian brunches offered not just pancakes, but the feeling of eating in the presence of stardom. For a time, the Strip felt like the culinary capital of the world, each new restaurant another feather in Vegas's cap. But the excitement didn't last forever. By 2025, the celebrity chef model is everywhere, and with ubiquity comes fatigue. What was once novel now feels routine. The price tags, however, never came down. At Gordon Ramsay Steak, a beef Wellington costs $75. At Nobu, a sushi platter easily climbs into the hundreds. Pancakes at Giada's Brunch are listed at $20 or more, and across the Strip diners report the same frustration the food doesn't always match the hype. A 2025 survey by the Las Vegas Review-Journal revealed that 57% of tourists who dined at celebrity-branded restaurants felt the meals were overpriced compared to quality. In other words, the magic wore off, but the prices didn't. Locals feel the sting even more. For them, these restaurants are not destinations, they are reminders that their city has been priced out of reach. Few families can justify dropping $300 for two on a weeknight dinner, not when groceries already strain their budgets. The deeper problem is how this shift altered the psychology of the entire Strip. Once restaurants competed on value, buffets tried to outdo one another with size, variety, and spectacle. But with celebrity chefs in control, the competition became about prestige. The price tag was no longer tied to portion or product. It was tied to the brand. Diners weren't paying for steak or sushi, they were paying for Gordon, for Nobu, for Giada. And once fine dining sets the benchmark at $100 a plate, everything else follows. Mid-tier restaurants raise their prices to keep pace. Fast food chains realize they can inflate their own menus because the baseline has shifted so high. Even casual cafes creep upward, emboldened by the new normal. The celebrity chef era didn't just change the top of the market, it dragged the entire market with it. The trickle-down effect is brutal. Tourists who splurge on a celebrity restaurant and feel underwhelmed often conclude that nothing on the Strip is worth the money. If the most high-profile meals leave a bitter aftertaste of regret, how can mid-tier options hope to inspire confidence? That disappointment spreads fast, shared through TikTok rants, Reddit threads, and travel blogs warning first-timers to temper their expectations. The irony is that Las Vegas succeeded too well at reinventing itself. In chasing prestige, it abandoned the generosity that once made it unique. The Strip transformed from a place where everyone could afford to indulge into a dining district for the wealthy with scraps left for the rest. And the more that transformation accelerated, the more glaring the divide between old Vegas and new Vegas became. Celebrity chefs didn't kill cheap Vegas on their own, but they rewrote the rules of its dining economy. They replaced value with exclusivity, abundance with branding. And in doing so, they widened the gap between what tourists expected and what they actually received. For many visitors, that gap feels like betrayal. But the story doesn't end there. As celebrity chefs pushed prices higher, another layer of frustration was waiting beneath the surface. Hidden fees, surcharges, and fine print crept into menus everywhere, turning an already expensive meal into something worse, a constant reminder that in Vegas, even the bill comes with tricks. For decades, fast food was the safety net of Las Vegas dining. When the steakhouse felt out of reach and the buffet line stretched too long, there was always McDonald's, Taco Bell, or Subway. It was quick, cheap, and reliable, the one place where budget-conscious tourists and locals alike could breathe easy. But by 2025, even fast food has been swallowed by the Strip's inflation. A Big Mac combo now runs $16 to $18. A basic pizza from Domino's or Pizza Hut costs $28 to $32. A Starbucks latte nearly $10. This isn't gourmet dining. This is survival food priced like a splurge. The impact is devastating. Families who once relied on fast food to stretch their Vegas trips now find 3 days of burgers and fries costing $400 or more. Locals feel it too. Construction workers who grabbed a $6 combo on their lunch break now pay more than double. College students who lived on dollar menus suddenly face choices between eating out or paying bills. What was once the last refuge has become another trap. And so the migration begins. Tourists flee the Strip in search of relief, driving to Henderson, Summerlin, or Chinatown, where a family can still eat for half the price. Locals abandoned dining out altogether, with studies showing neighborhood restaurant visits down more than a quarter since 2019. For them, the Strip no longer feels like theirs. Vegas used to be our city, one longtime resident lamented. Now it feels like theirs. The exodus is more than financial, it's cultural. The Strip was built on the idea of keeping visitors captive: food, drink, gambling, and entertainment under one roof. But once tourists and locals both start leaving for their meals, the heart of Las Vegas loses not just revenue, but its identity. Las Vegas was never just about cards, dice, or flashing lights. It was about a deal unspoken but deeply understood: lose a little at the slots, and the city would make you feel like a winner somewhere else. Free drinks at the blackjack table, shrimp cocktails, for pocket change, buffets so overflowing they seemed impossible. That promise of generosity built trust. It told visitors that no matter how much they gambled away, Vegas would give something back. By 2025, that deal is broken. Today's visitors don't feel spoiled, they feel squeezed. Every entree is overpriced, every cocktail is lighter, every bill comes with mysterious surcharges. Buffets, once open to everyone, are now exclusive luxury events. Fast food, once the last safe haven, has become unaffordable. For locals, the betrayal cuts even deeper. The city that once fed them cheaply after a shift now shuts them out entirely. Dining out, once woven into the culture, has become a financial burden. The damage isn't just economic, it's psychological. The magic of Las Vegas was never about the lights or the casinos alone. It was about indulgence, for all the sense that anyone could live like royalty for a night. When that illusion vanishes, the allure fades. A city built on abundance risks becoming just another overpriced destination, stripped of the generosity that made it legendary. And that is the true death of cheap Vegas: not the loss of buffets, not shrinkflation, not hidden fees, but the shattering of a promise that can never be easily rebuilt. Las Vegas was once the city where everyone felt like a winner, even if they had lost at the tables. It thrived on a simple illusion that indulgence was limitless, that food and drink flowed without restraint, that generosity defined the experience. But in 2025, that illusion has shattered. Buffets that once cost $10 now demand hundreds. Portions have shrunk, prices have soared, and hidden fees lurk beneath every menu. Fast food no longer offers escape, locals no longer feel welcome, and visitors no longer brag about being spoiled. They warn others about being drained. The tragedy is that the city's greatest asset wasn't just the gambling or the shows. It was trust. The trust that no matter who you were, Las Vegas would give you more than you expected. And once that trust erodes, once the promise of generosity turns into the reality of nickel and diming, the brand of Las Vegas itself begins to collapse. So the question now is not whether Vegas can survive. Tourists will still come, lights will still flash, and casinos will still hum. The question is whether it can survive as the Vegas the world once adored. Can the city that built its myth on abundance rediscover generosity, or will it remain a gated playground for the few willing to pay? For many, the answer is already written in the shrinking plates and ballooning checks. Cheap Vegas isn't just dead, it's buried, and with it, a piece of the city's soul. If you've ever experienced the old Vegas, you know what's been lost. If you haven't, you may never know it at all. So, would you pay $120 for a plate of food in the city that once promised steak for $9.99? Leave your thoughts below, and if you want more truths about America's brightest cities beyond the neon and beyond the glitter, don't forget to subscribe. The Vegas story is far from over. It's only getting more expensive.